Hi, and welcome to the Shai Show. My name is Shai. This week's Parsha is Parshas Devarim. Words. It is Parshas Devarim, the first Parsha, the book of words, which clearly I'm not very good at saying.
I have a question.
The book of words. Yes.
I'm no genius, but don't all books have words?
That's an excellent question. This week's Parsha starts off with Moshe Rabbeinu being summoned to translate the Torah into all 70 languages in the world. There were 70 nations that represented all the different peoples of the world in 70 different languages. And Moshe Rabbeinu came to translate them into all 70 languages. We also know that later in history, the time of the Greeks, when there was a Greek king of Egypt, Ptolemy, spelled like pterodactyl, but we actually pronounced the P and the T not like pterodactyl. So this Greek king wanted, and so to speak ordered, the Jewish sages, to translate the Torah into Greek. And the Gemara in Tractate Megillah records this as the 3 days of translation that they put into translating into Greek were considered 3 days of darkness that were as difficult for the Jews as the sin of the golden calf.
Why?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
So, it might make sense to look at the other time in the Talmud where it records a time where the Talmud records the sages referring to another time of it being as difficult for the Jews as the sin of the golden calf. There was a time where that Hillel, the great sage Hillel, was the Nasi. He was the Nasi prince, and we already had a tradition that we rule like Hillel, not like Shammai. Shammai was the one who would often contend with Hillel. And there was a particular time where Hillel decided to subjugate himself, to bow his head in respect to Shammai, and rule like Shammai. So that sounds like a great thing. Yet the Talmud records it as hard a day for the Jewish people as when the golden calf was built. We might go further and try to answer this about what were the Jews what were we trying to accomplish by building the golden calf? That is mostly for a separate shmooze. But one concept that we can bring out is this idea that the Jews were trying to find a replacement for Moshe Rabbeinu. I know that sounds strange, taking a golden calf, and in this golden calf, they were trying to replace Moshe Rabbeinu. So intense. To understand what they wanted to do, it was so intense. Their connection with Hashem was so close, was so personal, that during the giving of the Torah, that it was so intense for them, that it actually blew out their neshamas. It actually caused the entire nation, all the Jewish people, all their souls to depart for them, and for them to need to be resurrected. They understood that they needed an intermediary, something in between, in order to make it work, in order to make it happen, in order to have this relationship that they wanted. So when Moshe Rabbeinu was up on the mountain, they wanted to replace him, and they wanted to find themselves a new conduit, a new vehicle in order for them to connect to the Shem, because it was so intense. It was just too much. So they created this Egel. So, okay, they created this Egel, yet they were comparing this to Hillel allowing himself to be subjugated to Shammai, which sounds like a good thing. So maybe we can understand it as follows. That Hillel represented the qualities and the school of thought of chesed, of kindness, of acceptance. Not tolerance, acceptance, understanding. Shammai's school of thought was a thought of strict justice, that things in order to be received needed to be deserved by the letter of the law. We have a tradition that we rule like Hillel. And here Hillel himself was thinking that it is time to rule like Shammai. That shows his greatness, but it was still likened to the day that the ego was created. So maybe if you look a little bit further in the words, it's likened to when the egel, when the calf was created, not when the calf was worshipped. It sounds as though that it's focusing on the calf being created is that there's a potential to lead to an egel. At what point was the egel did the sin become manifest? When the Jews, when we at some point pointed at the egel itself and we said, "This is our God." Pretty scary, but this is our God. Even though we're saying this is our God, this was the connection to God, as it were. So and this was chosen as a replacement for Moshe Rabbeinu. So what if the concept, if the deeply rooted idea that there could be or should be sometimes in certain situations some level of an intermediary when things are intense to help with interpretation, what was so wrong about having this idol? So possibly that what was so intensely wrong with having this idol was that with an idol in and of itself is something that's defined and exact in its nature, and there's one form to it. There's one thing. Versus Moshe Rabbeinu, which, as a person, as someone with prophecy, someone with genius, someone with a connection to Hashem, is more capable of understanding the vicissitudes and the differentialities and basically our differences and how that personal relationship could be better personally related. Even though we don't need to go through anyone, and we don't necessarily should go through anyone when it comes to talking to Hashem and having that relationship, there's still a concept about having someone who is the hander, basically passes down the traditional understanding or is plugged in more directly, older, wiser, all the good things, and can give over to us, me, hopefully, a better understanding and approving of a relationship. I don't want to belittle and to call it like a relationship counselor, something, something on this line. So when we're looking at Hillel being accepting and Shammai being exacting, it seems as though that Hillel is so accepting that he can accept that sometimes it's good to be exacting. But the concern was there was a potential that if the head, the leader, Hillel, who was the Nasi, the prince, the number one, the big kahuna, even though it wasn't a Kohen, the big kahuna at the time was ruling like like Shammai of strict justice, there was a concern that now that the leader is ruling like Shammai, that possibly there's going to be a move towards strict justice. And that this was a great concern because the idea of strict justice can very easily lead to fanaticism. So when we take it the step back and we relate it to translating from Greek, something we should note about Lashon HaKodesh is that when especially the language of Hebrew, especially the language the Torah is written in, it is open to at least 70 interpretations. And these interpretations, these nuances, are all within the language of Hebrew itself, within Lashon HaKodesh itself. So not with the grammatical changes and the expressional changes and the stress changes are within the language. And that, if a person chooses to translate, anyone who's ever worked in translation or knows a few languages, when you choose to translate, you pretty necessarily choose one nuance of that language you're translating from. So to translate into a language is basically deciding on the nuance. And if we have a tradition that Torah and the Chesed and accepting, and there's at least 70 different opinions, and we're like Hillel, all these different opinions, by choosing to translate, like the sages did the second time for Ptolemy with the PT, not like the pterodactyl, when he to do it for him in that one particular language gives one particular nuance, and possibly is just only one of the facets gets recorded. So there's a potential of a fanaticism. Looking at Moshe Rabbeinu, when he translated in this week's Parsha, he translated into 70 languages representing the 70 different faces. So on some level, maybe we could say that all 70 different nuances were preserved. So to review, again, looking at Hillel and Shammai, Hillel is chesed and very accepting of all the 70 different facets. Shammai, strict justice, one way. It was a good balance. It was a good balance for Hillel, so much so that Hillel even held like him occasionally. At the same time, it could lead to fanaticism. And this actually had such an impact. This bowing down to this as in respect to Shammai had such an impact on Shammai, it's actually recorded from then on. Shammai actually got more lenient. He actually came more towards Hillel's side. different shmuz. Looking again at the time when the sages translated into Greek, that it turned out that although they recorded it only in one language, it didn't at least immediately so get abused, and the concern that the tradition would be lost, that someone who was learning Torah in just Greek would think that they had a full grasp of all 70 different facets of it. Whereas if they learning in the language of Lashon HaKodesh, the language meant to be learned in, that all these grammatical nuances and all these different ways that one can emphasize different portions of whatever pasuk, whatever verse one is in, that all 70 options, all the 70 different interpretations are still open and still accessible. So at a time that's approaching and coming up to Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple that was based on Sinus Chino and baseless hatred, the cure for baseless hatred is baseless love, or free love. And a concept of free love that maybe we can learn out from this, that it's not merely a matter of tolerating or recognizing that there are other views and other ways to interpret, or other avenues within the circle of Torah. There's at least 70 different ways, so it's not a matter of just like tolerating the 70 different ways. It's a matter of understanding that they're valid, respectable, and they're worth learning. And if one thinks that possibly that there's only one way to learn and continues down that one way of learning, they're missing out on the other 69 different avenues that Moshe Rabbeinu himself thought were worth recording, investigating, and preserving. So much so that the ones, or the sages who, under this very special circumstances, recorded only one avenue, there was a concern that this could be as great a problem as the sin of the golden calf, because it could lead to fanaticism and basically a lack of not just tolerance, but a lack of basically the love that we can have for another Jew who chooses a different path, also within the circle. So I hope this is a time that I'm inspired, as well as those around me, in order to really to love every one of these 70 different paths, and if there's something that connects with me, that resonates with me, that specifically speaks to me, I should go run and pick it up and be involved and have a close relationship and at the same time be able to respect the light that the other people are generating through their different avenues, at the same time reflecting back and giving whatever light that I can give and offer, and whatever opportunities that I can project with the light of the different mitzvahs that I run to project, and I see that, and possibly to thank you all for watching my YouTube video. Thank you, my friends, for coming by, and I'll see you next week. Parshas Devarim, the first